Ari, let's talk about Moon Man. This is Moon Man issue 9 from the 2009 series. This one is a team up with Spider-Man. And I do think some of you might enjoy this as an art school style team up between two heroes. It has some Spider-Man team up energy. The issue's biggest strength is its art. The interior artwork is by John Josie R.I.P. and it is immaculate. But maybe even that is an acquired taste. On the theme of acquired tastes, our cover is by Scott Gumball. If you like what he does, you might like this cover. It did make me wonder if he has ever done a cover that could not be described as a poster cover. So, this series, it came after a Moon Man run that I thought was the best Moon Man stories. And it wasn't just the case that this did a massive U-turn that put me off. I don't even blame the new writer for the change in direction. I understand coming on to Moon Man and realising that the Moon Man you know, or the Moon Man you wanted to write, wasn't the character who was appearing in Marvel Comics anymore. On one hand, I think it is a very bad slap in the face and immediate reversal of what came before. And on the other hand, I can't really fault it. I understand it. Personally, I felt that the 2006 series was a star maker for Moon Man. That version of Moon Man would be the version of Moon Man that I think is viable as a solo star. If you don't know, I will quickly explain that stuff. That run began with Moon Man in a wheelie chair, broken and beaten, after a fatal encounter with his nemesis, Bushman, who was bitten by a radioactive nemesis. Khonshu, the Egyptian god who resurrected and maybe empowers Moon Man, that was treated as either a malicious influence or outright something that was in Moon Man's head. Moon Man was an antisocial, brutal, psychotic vigilante who none of the other superheroes wanted anything to do with because he is a black stain on their community. I thought all of that, Moon Man's constant inner conflict about his own actions, the book's protagonist being unhinged and at times terrifying, the realism of both his injuries and those that he inflicts, the very real cost we were seeing of being Moon Man, not just on Moon Man but on his friends and allies as well. It was great. And then the Thunderbals were sent after him. And then this run began with Moon Man coming back, a celebrated hero who has now off-panel conquered all his demons. And Khonshu still talks to him, but now Moon Man is in control and he doesn't even listen to Khonshu, who is depicted as a tiny fly that Moon Man keeps in a jar. This Moon Man is just another hero in the Marvel Universe that doesn't offer anything unique or special. He is a budget Batman for people who want to read Batman but think that Batman is too mainstream. I said I wouldn't entirely blame the writer for the reset, but some blame I would lay at this writer's feet is that the scripts aren't good. This issue is pretty bad in a lot of ways. I do think you can appreciate it as an harmless team-up, but there is stuff that is badly set up or even presented. I would also say this might be an unfair reading, but this writer seemed to retreat from depicting Frenchie as being gay, going as far to even terminate his relationship and sever all his ties to his boyfriend. Frenchie being gay was a nice thing the 2006 run did to add some actual character to Frenchie, Moon Man's pilot, and it was handled maturely and responsibly. Here's what I mean about bad setup and bad writing. Our plot that brings Moon Man and Spider-Man together is that they by chance literally bumped into each other. The laziest story beat possible. While we are on this ridiculous use of 2 pages, I also want to warn you to prepare for many pages without any dialogue in this issue. But I also want to say this is, for some reason, a 38-page story with only one advertisement interrupting it. And that advertisement was on the previous page. I would suspect this was maybe intended to run as an annual, but then this series wasn't successful enough to deserve an annual. The 2006 Moon Man series lasted 30 issues. This one whimpered out at 10. Worse is that after the first story arc, it became a team-up book like this. We had a 2-part Dead Pills team-up before this, which is dreadful. And after this, we have an Avengers team-up, which I have reviewed. And to dispel the notion that this might be a repurposed annual, I think that one also had 38 pages as well. These last 2 issues are the only ones of this series I have, and I have them for John Josie RIP's art. He only did the last 2. The art on the other 8 issues was very poor. And our bad guy is Sandman, who is wanting to steal some jewellery. And his motivation is that he has a daughter that he feels he needs to financially support. You might think to yourself, hold on, when has that ever been Sandman's backstory? Well, ever since a little movie called Spider-Man 3 came out, and had that as Sandman's motivation, a man with no ideas like Dan Slott then made that Sandman's MO. Because it is easier to borrow than it is to think. So we have Moon Man and Spider-Man versus Sandman. And we have a game of hide and seek in a museum. A fun set piece, but without any dialogue or writing attached to it. The highlight here is obviously the art. One thing I wanted to talk about was Sandman, and how I really cannot read Sandman appearances after the retcon. In the late 90s, there was a destructive retcon to Sandman. And no, it wasn't when Jason Bourne said he and Norman Osborn were cousins because they had the same hairstyle. That was pretty bad, but worse than that is the one that Kurt Busey and Tom Beevort suggested because they didn't want Sandman affiliated with the Avengers anymore. Let's go back to the start. Sandman was introduced in the Silver Age in Amazing Spider-Man 4. He actually quickly transitioned over to being a Fantastic Force enemy more than a Spider-Man 1. Although he did get around quite a lot. Then, in the early 80s, Sandman turned over a new leaf and became friends with the Thing, and decided to use his powers to help people. He often teamed up with his former opponent, Spider-Man, and God, it's tough, but I do have to admit we are dealing with my own personal nostalgia here, which is something I try to avoid letting rule my objectivity. Some of the first Amazing Spider-Man back issues I got were Amazing Spider-Man 279, Amazing Spider-Man 280, and Amazing Spider-Man 281. You don't have to be a genius to recognise that the appearance of a few new Thunderbirds characters was my motivation. That story contains Spider-Man teaming up with Sybil Savile, but also Sandman. So Sandman being a good guy was something I was introduced to pretty quickly. The thing about Sandman's redemption was that it felt like a real change. It wasn't a story arc. It was character growth, and saw some actual evolution away from the status quo. It was something that made comics feel real. It was a character to invest in. This is someone who sought to change, and seeing that was rewarding to people who followed his redemption through various team-up books and Spider-Man appearances, and then eventually the Avengers. He joined the Avengers in Avengers issue 329. And I think that was an immensely interesting direction, but it was never realised, and almost nothing was done about it in Avengers. Him being an Avenger, by the way, I was introduced to that idea in a cameo appearance in an issue of Captain America, where I was so intrigued by the idea that this Spider-Man bad guy was somehow an Avenger, that I got Avengers 329 as fast as I could. I do believe that Sandman on the Avengers was a bad decision, mainly because there wasn't any follow through. There wasn't anything done with it. It became a footnote of little importance, and because it wasn't properly explored or even rationalised within the pages of Avengers much, it feels wrong and daft that Sandman was an Avenger. Despite my problems with that idea, I recognise it as one that could have worked and should have been executed better. But then we get to the usual people, the miserable, funless people who destroy comics because they cannot sleep at night knowing that Sandman was once an Avenger, and how that ruins their outdated nostalgia of what the Avengers once were. Kurt Busey was writing the Avengers, with Tom Beevort editing, and the pair had previously worked on Spider-Man stories before graduating to the Avengers. And they were responsible for a lot of shite retcons and forced mandates on Spider-Man. The Sandman one is dreadful. You might think that I am deliberately funneling all my hatred to the same people, but look, the story was written by fucking Tom Beevort. I am right, I am always fucking right when it comes to these fucking losers. We have wingless man, brainwashed Sandman to be a bad guy again. He erases Sandman's memory of ever being a hero. And now, and ever since then, Sandman has been a bad guy again. Tossing out all the growth and the feeling that these comics are allowed to change so that they could have Sandman be a bland, generic thug again. The result is that when I, and I would assume anyone else with a brain, reads any subsequent Sandman appearances, we're just thinking about the fact that this isn't Sandman. We're watching a man perpetually under someone else's control. We're seeing a version of Sandman which is no longer true to the actual character. We're seeing wingless man's idea of Sandman. Or rather, we are seeing people who stopped reading comics sometime in 1979 and their idea of Sandman, who is also Norman Osborn's cousin. The other thing about both these retcons, actually, is that they were never referred to again. They were forced into canon as fixes or tweaks, and the intention was that they would stand forever uncontested without any actual point or payoff. As a Thunderbirds fan, redemptive bad guys having their entire personalities and growth shaved off callously by Tom Beevort's inferior editing is far from a new prospect for me. I think of Sandman as one of the most distasteful and insulting examples of character regression, and the worst kind of character regression because both in story and out, it was forced on him. Surely, giving the character a daughter that he wishes to support is a move to make the character more sympathetic or giving him some compassion. Well, he already had all of that before Tom Beevort and Kurt Busey. The fact that people after them are scrambling around, inventing never-before-seen daughters to try and make Sandman three-dimensional is a testament to how wrong and pointlessly selfish it was to erase Sandman's character of 15 years. You might also think I'm getting a bit carried away about Sandman. It's only Sandman. Who cares about Sandman? Who cares about D-Man? It's not Sandman. It's what it represents. Why should anyone invest in comic books or their characters when a fedora-wearing slob can spit in your face and say that it doesn't matter anymore like that? How do I get back to talking about the comic after that? Right, one thing that I do need to say. John Josie R.I.P. He is an amazing artist. I am a big fan of John Josie R.I.P. He did that Wolfman series I like. Wolfman, the best there is. He did the art for Hank Miller's Robot Cop 2, the comic that was based on his original screenplay for the film. It was pretty bad. I might be misremembering, but didn't John Josie R.I.P. do one story of New 52 Nightbird, Dick Grayskull, I think issue 17 and 18, or 18 and 19, something like that. Anyway, yeah, big fan of his art. I am intrigued by the possibility that he might actually be able to do art to this standard on a schedule. These last two issues of Moon Man, he puts in a total of 74 pages of art across 2 consecutive issues. All 12 issues of that Wolfman series had his art, and they came out every month. If his work ethic is that good, and he can churn out art as detailed as he does, this is an artist that I think you have to respect. You might not like how it looks, but the effort that he puts in and his apparent ability to do it to a deadline, it should scare every other artist working. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of John Josie R.I.P. I have heard some people say it's ugly, especially the faces, and some people say that the amount of detail has the effect of not making it clear where your attention should lie. Anyway, here is some absolutely painful comedy with Frenchie and an obnoxious taxi driver. As I said, I didn't enjoy this issue for much besides the art, but other people might. I do want to point out though that my introduction to Moon Man was actually another team up with Spider-Man when they teamed up against Cycle Clone, who is, fuck it, you can predict what team he was on by now. Thunderballs. He was on Thunderballs. With this issue, one of my biggest criticisms would be our climax. It is established very badly and then depicted very sloppily. I didn't even realise it was the climax until the story was over. You see, Frenchie, he is going to fly a supersonic jet plane to use the engine and the turbines to blow Sandman apart. I didn't realise this was the end game when I was reading it. It hadn't been built to, and it wasn't being handled like it was the big finish. It felt like the first phase of the finale, and when you consider the splash pages we have had before, you would think that the victory would be one as well. But it's not. That's it. It's over. Sandman is defeated. The heroes gone home. And it was when Moonman's girlfriend wanted him to get into a bubble bath with her that I went, I think this story is over now. I don't know what to say. I don't know what else there is to say. Again, I will repeat that you might enjoy it. I enjoy that it is a double-length story with no advertisements, with quality art. Those positives seem a bit wasted on this. I'll give it a nice round 7 thumbs up.